The Chiefs cap space is up to 27. There's a lot of things you can do with that. What should they be today on Locked On Chiefs?
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, friends and neighbors. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download that app right now. Create an account and use our code LOCKEDON. You're going to get $20 off of your first purchase with the Gametime app. We have a lot to talk about. Coming off of yesterday's show, we walked through some of the mock draft scenarios. The trade affected that, and it also has a lot of impact on the cap and who could be under contract. We're going to run it all down for you today. We're going to start with the future impacts, what next year might look like. What does Brett Veach need to do, and what does the cap space look like? That's today on the Locked On Podcast Network. Part of your team every single day on every platform for free all the time. Here on YouTube, where you can like and sub and hit the bell, please. We appreciate you becoming subscribers. We'd like to talk to you guys repeatedly. The everydayers already know that. They are on this platform every single day. The locos, as we call them, the insider text line is for them as well. You can join that by texting 816-357-8781. You can also hit us on the Spotify and the Apple podcast platforms. Anywhere there's a free podcast, you can find us 5 days a week plus. Like this last weekend, give you some extra content when something happens like the L'Jarius trade. It comes down, you got to do something about it. And for those of you that want a little bit more, he's Chris Clark. He's the founder of KCChiefsCorner.com or Chiefs Corner on Substack. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, home of the Athletic Matrix, where you can get that right now. V1 is out off of the combine data. V2 is coming, and the draft guide is right after that. Draft guide will be available for pre-order later this week, so you can use your code LOC to get a nice discount on that. You can also find me at NFL33.com and RGR Football. We have to get right into the cap space. I know 27 is the number. That's all I know. But it is basically just removing all that 19 coming off for the tag that is now done and has nothing to do with the Chiefs, right?
So it hasn't hit the waiver wire from what I've seen, and so we assume it's going to get done. The Chiefs haven't announced it yet. That will be something that will be coming in the next couple of days, I would imagine, going through all the iterations of everything that needs to get done. But everything we've been told is it's a done deal. He is gone for the third round pick in 2025 and a swap of the seventh round pick, which actually I didn't realize was the first pick in the seventh round this year. That's actually pretty cool that they have that pick. I do think there's a lot of value there because they're going to be able to add players that maybe they weren't going to be able to get with their seventh round pick. So something to see there. Those seventh round picks are always going to be probably special teams guys, but it's also going to be guys that you would want as UDFAs, but probably won't get to UDFAs. So something to watch when we get to that. The cap space, $19.8 million coming back to the Chiefs on this deal. That puts him at $27.4 million of cap space at this point. That puts him at about 8th in the NFL when it comes to available cap space. Really quick though, the rookie pool is only $2.8 million, and so you're basically talking about $25 million in cap space. That's kind of what you have to play with here. And obviously some of that's going to get eaten up by going away from the top 51, but you're not going to be dealing with that until September. So lots of things that can go into this and how it's going to work out. But yeah, this is a big deal for the Chiefs. It frees up a ton of cap space. It frees them up to be able to do several different things.
I always estimate about $5-6 million for the rookie class because I don't think they're going to take every pick here. We'll talk about some of the scenarios coming up. We tried some yesterday, and we're going to continue to focus on that. That number can change, but the rookie pool right now at their current selections, 2.8. That certainly helps and gives you a little bit more firepower here in what is now are we on the 17th wave of free agency at this point?
Something like that. And the big thing to remember when it comes to the rookie pool is you're kicking the people off on the top 51. You're only going to be doing that for a couple of players. Your first round pick, your second round pick, maybe your third round pick. Really is going to depend on the contract. I think third round probably hits that as well. But your fourth round through seventh round probably aren't going to affect your cap space very much. So you're talking less than $3 million probably to sign your draft class. Again, that's against top 51. It's a little bit different, but that still gives them the ability to go do things. And one of the big things that I expect to happen in the coming days is probably maybe you go out and you re-sign Blaine Gabbert. Veteran QB, Andy Reid always seems to love having a veteran QB here. It cost him about 1.1 against the cap last year. I would expect another veteran salary benefit type contract, and would be 1.2. So at that point, you're still sitting at 26 million. If you take off the rookies, you're around 23. That's still plenty of moves that you can make with that space.
Now, I was shocked to hear that number, and I think you were a little surprised as well.
Very.
But how does that work? And for a veteran quarterback, I think that's great because you get the experience and you don't have to pay for the everyday downs. How do they work that again? And what type of contract is that?
So it'd be a veteran salary benefit, and basically they're going to pay him closer to 1.3, I think. And I don't have the numbers right in front of me for 2024. It's a little bit different than 2023 because they adjust every single year. But they pay him a little bit more. They are able to give him a cash bonus of, I think, up to like $150,000, maybe a little bit more than $150,000. And their cap number is limited to a lower amount. So it's really just getting them on the roster for a cheaper amount. And once that's done, we'll have the numbers for you. But it's still not going to take up much space. And based on what Gabbert did last year, there's no reason to think that he would be able to find a better deal elsewhere, in my opinion.
It may not be able to. I certainly love the idea of bringing Gabbert back, especially on that level and that little cost. I am 100% for that, and so should every wakeboarder, jet skier out there and in the area lakes. You want playing Gabbert around.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be a great move for the Chiefs. And then you start looking at some of the other things that they can do. Last year, really quick before we hop to our first break, last year they brought in Donovan Smith. And they paid him just under $3 million for the entire season. If they're going to do that type of move again, that'd still put them close to $20 million in cap space. That's the type of move that you can make with this extra cap space that you have now. And the Chiefs are probably going to keep about 5 back for the year and getting things ready. So I'd say you're probably closer to 15 if you get that deal done with Donovan Smith, if he's willing to come back for that type of contract. But that's the type of veteran that you're looking at right now in this, fourth week of free agency, God, it seems like it's forever ago, but it's really only the second week of free agency, isn't it? That's how crazy it is. So we'll see what happens. I guess it's the third week of free agency at this point. That's where my brain is. It's all over the place. It's been a busy couple of weeks.
Yeah, it happens. And that's the type of deal that they've been very good at executing recently in the last several years. But what do they do? What do we expect them to do? What do we think is a possibility? That's coming up next here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We all know it's hard to get tickets to Arrowhead, and it's even harder if you're trying to go to a Jayhawk basketball game, but you shouldn't have to worry about the tickets for the next big event that you want to get to. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports events, music venues, comedy, and even theater events near you with great last-minute deals, all-in prices. You can view the seat from the app as well as the best price guarantee. Gametime takes all the guesswork out of buying tickets to your next event. And to see that seat from the beginning, that's the big thing for me. I want to know where I'm going to be and what my view is going to be. It's the best feature out there, all in prices, no hidden fees, all up front. It's a great deal that you can check it out, and you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. So take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, you just have to create the account and use the redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. It's the best way to go about it. Gametime, get it today. It's last-minute tickets, it's lowest prices, and it is guaranteed. You want to check out the Locked On Sports Today feed because it's 24/7, going to give everything that you need, especially as we get into some of the smaller deals. Some of these things, like Brett Veach likes to do. We mentioned Donovan Smith because that's exactly what happened last season. Now, before we get into the other options, I do think, and I think I said it a week or two ago, that I think is still in the back of the Chiefs' mind, Brett Veach's in particular, as a viable option for this next season to have a veteran presence at the tackle spot. Do you think that we're past that role at this point?
I don't think so. I think that it's going to be something that they're going to look at, and I do think that they could bring him in here. Okay, so I was just looking because I was curious. They signed him May 4th, so they signed him right after the draft last year. So it's possible they're not going to sign him until after the draft and they see what they're able to do in the draft. So, when we start talking about cap and we start talking about all the different things that the Chiefs can do, they may be trying to do stuff in this third week of free agency. They may not. I mean, they may be waiting until after the draft on a lot of this stuff. There are still some players out there. I would think that they'd want to bring in a couple of guys over the next couple of weeks, just because I don't know that they're all going to sit out there until after the draft. And the big thing that Veach always seems to do is he tries to fill all the holes he possibly can before they go into the draft, so they aren't stuck going at a certain position. And that's what, you look at what we did yesterday in the draft, taking a guy, Braden Fisk. DT isn't looked at as a huge need on this roster, but it would be a huge boon and benefit to this defense if they can get more interior pressure and have somebody that can step in and be a complementary player to Chris Jones.
And that's, I think, a very good point, because we have seen them go back-to-back years in selecting edge rushers low in the first round. I would still consider George Karlaftis' selection, 23, as a low first round. I know it's right there about the two-thirds of the way through, but still. So updating the interior pressure, despite Turk Wharton's return, I think is definitely something that they could do. For me, I want to go right back to the well, though, and bring Mike Dana back in. That's probably the first move that I would use this cap space for. What would you think of that?
I'd love it. I think that would be a great move for them to do. He's still sitting out there. I don't know what you would have to pay him. They did pay Karlaftis at 30, so it was the back end of the first round because they took Trent McDuffie around 21 or 22. Don't quote me on that. It was with the Patriots, and maybe it was even in the late teens. But that was the year they had 2 first-round picks, and they moved up to go get Trent McDuffie because they didn't expect that he was going to be there. Then they went back and got George Karlaftis. They're getting younger edge rusher. That's always a smart move. It's a premium position that is going to get paid a ton of money. I don't think that they're going to be looking at that this year, but there's lots of different ways that this could go. I mean, the trade of L'Jarius Sneed could also mean that they're going to use that 2025 third-round pick to move up in the first round. I mean, they could use it to do that. They could use the first rounder next year. They could use the second rounder next year. They could use the second rounder this year. That third rounder gives them the ability to go out and do what they need to do to go get a guy that they like if somebody falls. And I'm not so sure that it's even a case of whether or not somebody falls at this point. I think that they're probably looking at a couple of positions in a incredibly deep draft at wide receiver and tackle that if you feel like that's a position you need to fill, it is worth trading away future draft picks to go get the guy that you want. I'm not saying something stupid like move up to the top 10, although I wouldn't hate it for a tackle. But I know a lot of people would. But my point is that you're in a situation right now where you can do just about whatever you want. You have the roster set as you kind of need it to be set right now. And with how historic this tackle class and this wide receiver class is looked at, not getting a guy at those two positions in the first 2 rounds would really surprise me.
Yeah, I agree. And that pick can be a chip to do a number of things. I still feel like, despite what all that is, I still want to bolster the interior defensive line. I'd like to start with Mike Dana, knowing that Charles Omenihu can come back from the injury. And if he is fully healthy, it might take a year. And so I want to bolster that with not just somebody that can play outside like Felix Anudike-Uzomah, BJ Thompson. I do want somebody that can play inside as well. And I think that's pretty unique to what Mike Dana brings. So you can do that for what? 4? 5? I think the fact that he's still out there means he's not getting an $8 million per year contract. I think that it's to the point now that we understand it's probably affordable. I would probably do that, like you said, before the draft and see what you can get done on the offensive side now, just by putting that in. You were right. It was Trent McDuffie at 21 and Karlaftis at 30. I did, I think, 10 hours of live TV that day. So forgive me, folks. Everything gets a little mushy at this point.
I suppose we can forgive you for that. I'm sitting here trying to figure out, when did they actually sign Omenihu last year? It wasn't right off the bat. It was something that they signed him a little bit into free agency. So I would think that $8 million for Omenihu last year, I thought was a good deal. I just don't think that Dana is going to get that. So I agree with you. I think it's probably going to be closer to 4 to 6, somewhere in there. And at this point, I honestly would be seeing if he would be willing to come back for 2 years. Give him a heavy incentive-laden deal, knowing the fact that you don't have anybody. Charles Minihue is a free agent after this next year, and he's coming off an ACL injury. Give Dana the chance to actually come in and win a starting role and maybe compete and give him some incentives to do so.
Agree. I will say this. I did just check it. It was March 15th that Minihue signed. So that was definitely beyond first wave, probably more like second wave that they got that done. So
that would have been first wave. That would have been right off the bat, actually.
Did not start on the 11th?
It started.
The whole tampering thing throws me.
Yeah, me too. No, yeah, it would started around the 15th of March last year. So it would have been probably first wave, very end of first wave, if not second wave, I suppose. But they could still, there's still so many things that they could do. I mean, we've talked about those types of things that they could do. They could bring back a player like Mike Dana. In my mind, I still think that one of the things that they're planning on doing with some of this space is I think that they're going to try to extend some of their own guys. There's some guys that are coming on that are going into their last year on their contracts that I think they're going to want to have here for the next, 4 or 5 seasons.
I completely agree. We're going to talk about some of them, as well as I have one more name to throw at you about a possible new acquisition right after this here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game in this tournament whenever you want. Whether you're betting on an upset or the one seed, it's time to go dancing with America's #1 sports book, and that is FanDuel. Right now, new customers are getting $200 in bonus bets. If your first bet wins on FanDuel, it's $200 back using point spreads, money lines, whatever you're looking for. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Visit us at FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet your college hoops until they cut down the nets right now on FanDuel. I almost got this in the last segment, but I do want to ask you, and I want to ask you folks to check out the Locked On Sports Today feed. It's 24/7 here on YouTube and also on Amazon Fire. You can check that out anywhere, and you'll get all the information you're looking for. I think you'll dig it. And you can do that whenever it's convenient for you because we're on 24/7 a day. Now, we need to talk about what the other options are and the variability that this trade gives the Kansas City Chiefs. But just real quick, a lot of folks concerned about where do you draft another corner? Do you take a risk on Nas Johnson coming off of the injury? Some guys that are younger players and maybe aren't progressing as fast as Trent McDuffie is. Very hard to do that. One name that keeps coming up that I know how I feel about, and I want to know how you feel about, is Xavier Howard, who has been designated as a post-June 1 release by the Miami Dolphins, almost 31 years old. So it would definitely be a last hurrah, join and disseminate your information. At this point, I don't know that man coverage is really much of an option for him. Where do you stand on that?
I don't see them going that direction. I could be wrong. I think that they feel like they can go and draft guys and be very happy with the corners that they have. I saw somebody tweet out today that Najee Johnson is the oldest corner on the roster, and I think he's 25 years old. So this is a very young group. It would make sense to maybe bring in a veteran, but the other issue with it is if you look at what I think he's going to cost, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe somebody's not going to give him a bigger deal, but I would think that he'd want more than a couple of $1 million as his base, and I don't think Kansas City, although they have the space, is going to want to use their space that way. I think that they're going to look at the roster. They're going to say, okay, well, we feel pretty good about the 4 corners that we have right now, and that doesn't even include Jones, who didn't really do much last year. I think that they feel like Najee Johnson's going to be back. I mean, he will be, I think, back probably for mini camps and for OTAs. He got hurt early last year, so he should be back. Now, whether or not he's able to reclaim what he was doing last year, that's a whole nother question, and that's something that's fair. But I do think that the Chiefs also feel like they're able to develop corners very well. So going out and signing a guy, unless he's willing to come in and chase a ring on a heavy incentive-laden deal at that position, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, that's how I feel as well. You've proven you can build and develop cornerbacks. You have about 6 by my count that are available to try to grow into a starting role. Obviously, Josh Williams and Jalen Watson being the top 2 of them. Najee Johnson does have the injury, so, but Nick Jones, Shamar Khan, there are plenty of options here. I agree. I wouldn't go the older veteran route at this point either.
And really quick, I don't think it's fair to either Watson or Williams to try to compare them to Trent McDuffie, but that's me.
Yeah, well, hey,
They're not going to grow at the same rate as Trent McDuffie. So, and I'm okay with that. McDuffie is a stud, and he has been since he came out. And that was never a pick that I saw them being able to make because I didn't think he dropped that far.
That is the surprise. And we're going to talk about draft philosophy coming up here later in the week, folks. What we'd like to see them do with this extra pick and what it opens up in terms of possibilities. But you mentioned it in the last segment. I think the bigger impact of this cap space right now is allowing you to try to get a deal done with one of at least 3 guys that you want to talk to next season. And I think if you can't work those out, if you don't trade the extra third that you just got for Sneed now, that becomes very, very important. Another top 100 pick, by my estimation, likely a top 75 pick in 2025. If you're unable to reach new contracts on a class that has a lot of guys in it, Nick Bolton, Creed Humphrey, Noah Gray, Trey Smith, all in the 2021 draft class. That's a lot to get done all at once.
It is, and I think you can get Gray for cheap if you want to go that direction. But I think that they're probably not going to go that direction unless they're not able to draft somebody this year. Then maybe they go and see if Gray would agree to another 2 years. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. When I look at this, to me, the number one guy on the list is going to be Creed Humphrey. And I know some people, and I need to be clear. It's not because I don't like Nick Bolton. I think Nick Bolton is great. I think he's a fantastic chief. I want him to stay here for a long term. And I know there are people out there that don't. But I say Creed Humphrey because he is the centerpiece of that offensive line. And his chemistry with Mahomes is the most important thing that I think that you can continue when you're looking at that draft class.
Yeah, I agree. And I will tell you this. I see them as dead even because I don't think you can go out and get another Nick Bolton. I don't think that availability is going to be there. In probably the intangibles more than what he is on the field in terms of coverage ability, he performs better now than I ever expected him to coming out of Mizzou. I didn't think he'd be able to be to this point. So he's lived up to potential. But it's his leadership. It's his play call. It's the emotional side of it that I think this team is sorely going to miss Willie Gay. And I think part of that has to be the continuity going forward that Nick Bolton brings. But I'll also say this. Creed Humphrey is not just a center. I do believe he can play guard. And I do believe there are question marks about that going forward. Chiefs haven't had a greatest track record of keeping their centers, right? Rod Hudson moved on. Mitch Morris moved on, you know?
Yeah, I think that this is different. Humphrey, to me, like Morse was good. And, obviously Hudson was good too, but neither of them were looked at as being the best center in the NFL or second best center in the NFL if you consider Jason Kelce and his run that he's had. To me, Creed Humphrey, I think, is been the number one center in the NFL or number 2 center in the NFL since he probably his sophomore year. And I think that he's continuing to get better. I actually saw a tweet out there that said he actually had an injured hand, and that's part of the reason his snapping was so off in the playoffs. Playing through injury with something like that would be hard, but I think he's the most important piece of that draft class to sign long term. And the other side of that is that the center market isn't like crazy. Like you go look at the guard market. The guard market is crazy. If you want to talk about moving Humphrey to guard, that's $20 million a year. That's not what they're paying centers right now. So to me, Humphrey makes the most sense. He's already got a cap hit of almost $5 million this year, which you could reduce by signing him to a long-term deal and giving him some, signing bonus money. Nick Bolton, 24, he's got a cap hit of $3 million, and Trey Smith is almost $3.4 million at 25 years old. Humphrey's the oldest of the three. He's 26. So, I mean, but I don't think he's going to be slowing down anytime soon. I think he can play well into at least his early 30s. So, to me, I think you make a move, and I think you sign one of those guys to a long-term deal, if not 2 of them to a long-term deal, because I think it's going to be even more and more important over the next several years when you're trying to keep this dynasty window open as long as you possibly can to sign your guys the first chance you get, or they're going to be too expensive by the time that they become free agents.
I agree with you. And I'll say this too. Part of the ongoing dilemma, and no draft class represents it more than this one. L'Jarius Sneed came out the first year of COVID. Now you have guys that are staying in college for 6 seasons. And it's only going to get more and more imperative that you have a first-year contract or first contract in the NFL. And that second one becomes iffy because you're going to have more guys that come out and are ready for their second contract at the age that L'Jarius Sneed was at 27 years old. So it's got to be about retaining what you can retain while they're there and rolling everything else over. The next few years, I think, are going to be more turbulent than we've seen the last few.
Well, and so really quickly looking, the top of the center market was Jason Kelsey at 14.2. Frank Ragnow is the second highest at 13.5. So you're looking at probably a contract with, Humphrey being somewhere around that $14 million, $15 million a year range versus what we saw the guards go for. Trey Smith, you want to re-sign Trey Smith? The going market for guards right now is what, $20 million, which is absurd.
Yeah.
Joe Thuney
Joe Thuney's bad.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. Quentin Nelson is $20 million a year. Robert Hunt is $20 million a year. Chris Lindstrom is $20 million a year. Zach Martin, 18.5. I mean, I don't know where you put Trey Smith in those numbers, but I think he's every bit as good as Robert Hunt. I don't think Hunt is a great guard personally. I think he's good, but he's not great. And I think Trey is good, maybe not great, but $20 million for a guard is a lot of money. So Thuney is barely cracking the top 10 at $16 million. So you're still looking at more money there.
Yeah.
Now you flip it over to the linebacker class. Roquan Smith is $20 million. Fred Warner is $19 million. Tremaine Edmonds is $18 million. I mean, you're looking at $16, $17, $18 million, and it's just going to get worse. I mean, this is if you're going to re-sign, I think you have to re-sign 2 of those 3 guys. We'll see what they end up doing, but I am not going to be shocked if they're going to be looking for a new right guard. Although, I thought that Thuney would be done a couple of seasons ago, and now you're going to be in a situation where he's coming back from an injury, and who knows what that's going to be like. So it's going to be interesting to watch that as well.
I'm going to have a couple of late round draft picks to show you guys that there are options to be the next Allegretti, to be that guy that backs all these guys up that we're talking about getting new contracts.
Patrick Queen, who I thought has been a very good linebacker over the past several seasons, 13.6. That was done this year. That's showing me that the market has changed at the linebacker level. So I don't know that they're going to be getting to $20 million, maybe over $15 million. So I don't know what Bolton will get, but something to watch there. Patrick Queen, I thought, played very well for the Baltimore Ravens, and he only got 13.6 when it came to APY. So something that's interesting.
Yeah, value is definitely shifting around the NFL, and we're going to keep you on top of it. We're going to get you ready for the draft, and we're talking about what comes next with Matt Derrick tomorrow, and then back on the draft options. Start looking at prospects, giving you your rankings. You can find more about it right now at rogueapc.com, where you can get the Athletic Matrix version 1. Version 2 is coming out shortly. Thank you for spending your time with us. We appreciate it. If you would like this video, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell. Get over on the audio platforms, on Spotify, on Apple, on all the free ones, and get in the text line at 816-357-8781, where we hit you with all the breaking news whenever we need to. We appreciate your time spending it with us today. Thank you very much, and we will talk to you